He invited me back just to watch me bleed. The invitation was sealed with the Alpha King's crest, a deliberate public mockery. He didn't want me at the high moon ceremony to celebrate a new beginning. He wanted me there as a witness to my own replacement. Years ago, he stood before the pack and called me Baron. He said I was a defect in his lineage, a mate who could never give him the alpha heir his throne demanded. He rejected me in front of everyone, casting me out as a failure, while the pack whispered that I was broken. Tonight, he is presenting his new Luna and their future to the realm. He expects me to arrive in rags, a hollowed-out ghost of the woman he discarded. He wants the satisfaction of seeing me look at his new life with envy. He's about to find out that the only thing broken was his judgment. I'm not arriving alone, and I'm not arriving broken. Standing beside me is a boy with eyes like a winter storm, and a scent that makes every warrior in the courtyard hit the ground in instinctive submission. He isn't just a child. He is the true alpha heir, the one the healers said was impossible. If you've ever been told you weren't enough, if you've been mocked for a weakness that was actually your greatest secret strength, stay with me. Because the king is about to realize that while he was busy celebrating a lie, I was raising the truth, and his throne is about to find out who it actually belongs to. If you love rejected mate revenge, alpha regret, public humiliation turned into absolute power reversal, and heirs who bow to no throne, subscribe now and stay to the end. Because this ceremony was meant to celebrate his victory. It ends with his downfall. The royal grounds were alive with celebration when she arrived. Torches burned high, banners snapped in the night wind, and the pack gathered in ceremonial ranks, dressed in finery meant to impress allies and intimidate rivals. The air was thick with pride and fertility, scents layered with expectation. At the center stood the Alpha King, crowned, certain, smiling. His new Luna stood beside him, radiant and adored, one hand resting possessively over her swollen belly. The pack watched her with reverence reserved for women who secured bloodlines. And then they saw her. Whispers rippled instantly. That's her, the rejected one, the barren mate. She actually came. She walked forward with measured steps, cloak drawn close, posture straight. She did not look away from the crowd. She did not rush. She felt the Alpha King's gaze lock onto her and sharpen. Well, he said aloud, voice carrying easily across the grounds, you honored the invitation. I always respect ceremony, she replied evenly. A few wolves laughed under their breath. The Luna smiled thinly. It's good you could attend, she said sweetly. Some of us are fortunate enough to give the pack a future. The words were deliberate. The wound was old. She nodded once. So I see. The Alpha King gestured toward the stone dice. Stand there, he instructed. You deserve a clear view of everything she had lost. She moved as directed. What they did not notice, what their hunger for spectacle blinded them to, was the presence walking beside her. A child, not hidden, not cowering. A boy of about 6 winters stepped into the torchlight with her, his hands slipping easily into hers. He moved with untrained confidence, shoulders squared, gaze level. The grounds went unnaturally quiet. Not because children were forbidden, because dominance answered him. Torches flared. Several warriors stiffened, instincts reacting before thought. The Alpha King froze. His smile faltered, sense spiking sharp with confusion, and something far more dangerous. Recognition. Who is that? Someone whispered. The boy looked around calmly, then up at the Alpha King. The bond, severed, denied, buried, trembled. This, she said quietly, resting her hand on the boy's shoulder, is my son. Shock detonated through the pack. That's impossible. She was declared barren. No, feel that. The Luna staggered back half a step. The Alpha King's voice came out hoarse. Who is his father? She met his gaze without flinching. You, she said, or rather, the man you were before you chose cruelty over truth. The boy stepped forward and bowed, not in submission, in acknowledgement. And in that single, devastating gesture, the ceremony meant to crown the Alpha King's legacy began to collapse, audibly, irreversibly, under the weight of the air he had never been meant to control. The silence did not break. It spread. Like frost racing across stone, it crept from the dais outward, into the ranks of warriors, into the elders clustered near the ceremonial fire, into the Alpha King himself, who stood frozen as if the world had shifted 1 inch too far beneath his feet. The boy remained bowed only a heartbeat longer. Then he straightened. The air did not snap back into place. It adjusted. Several wolves lowered their heads without meaning to. A captain near the outer ring clenched his fists, fighting an instinct that had never failed him before. An elder's cane struck the stone once as he stumbled, breath-catching. "This isn't possible," the Alpha King said at last, but his voice betrayed him, thin, unanchored. She did not answer immediately. She let the pack feel it, the resonance in the boy's chest, the way the ground seemed to accept his weight without resistance, the quiet, balanced authority that did not push, did not threaten, yet demanded acknowledgement all the same. "You said I was barren," she replied calmly. "You were wrong." The Luna found her voice, sharp and brittle. "This is a manipulation," she snapped, "some trick to disgrace the ceremony." The boy turned his head toward her. He did not glare. He did not bare teeth. He simply looked. The Luna's sense spiked. Panic, insecurity, a desperate flare of protective dominance that found nothing to anchor to. Her hand flew to her belly as if to shield it. The boy looked away politely, uninterested. That frightened them more than aggression ever could. The Alpha King descended from the dais in slow, deliberate steps, every instinct screaming to regain control of the space. He stopped several paces away from the boy, eyes searching his face. Bone structure, eye shape, the familiar echo in the chest he had felt only once before. "How old are you?" he asked. "6 winters," the boy answered evenly. "Who raised you?" "My mother." "Where?" "Where you couldn't reach us." The answer struck deeper than insult. "You kept this from me," the Alpha King said, anger finally bleeding through the shock. She stepped subtly forward, placing herself half a pace between him and the boy. Not shielding, not aggressive, definitive. "I protected him from you," she corrected. "There is a difference." A murmur rippled through the pack. "The law," an elder began. "The law was written to protect bloodlines," she interrupted, voice level, "not to excuse cruelty." The Alpha King's jaw tightened. "If he is my son," he said slowly, "then he belongs to this pack." The boy did not flinch. "No," she replied, "he does not belong to anyone." The air thickened. Several warriors bristled instinctively. This was the language of defiance, of challenge, but the boy's presence did not spike. It settled. "I don't want your crown," the boy said quietly, "and I don't want your pack." The Alpha King stared at him. "You're too young to understand what you're refusing." The boy met his gaze steadily. "You're too old to pretend it's about generosity." A sharp intake of breath swept the crowd. The Alpha King recoiled as if struck, not by the words, but by the clarity behind them. "You invited us here," she said calmly. "You wanted witnesses." Her gaze swept the ceremonial grounds, the banners, the torches, the assembled pack, hungry for spectacle. "You wanted them to see me diminished." The Alpha King's mouth opened, closed. "You wanted proof that rejecting me made you right," she continued. "Instead, you are being shown the cost." The Luna stepped forward again, voice trembling with rage. "He is a threat to my pups." The boy turned toward her, expression thoughtful. "I'm not," he said, "unless you decide I have to be." That was when the elders understood. This was not a child who would be ruled. This was a presence that would force choice. The Alpha King's hands curled into fists. "If he is truly mine," he said, voice hoarse, "then he must be tested." "No," she said instantly. "It's tradition." "It's fear," she corrected. "And you don't get to dress it up anymore." The boy stepped forward once more, not toward the Alpha King, but into the center of the ceremonial ring. "I don't need your tests," he said calmly. "You already failed mine." The ground pulsed faintly beneath his feet, as if acknowledging the truth. The Alpha King's breath shattered. He staggered back half a step, years of certainty collapsing inward. Around them, the pack began to fracture, not loudly, not violently. Internally, because the ceremony meant to mock a rejected mate had done something far worse. It had revealed an heir who could not be owned, and an Alpha King who suddenly realized his crown no longer recognized him. The ceremony never recovered. No drums sounded. No elder stepped forward to bless the heirs. The torches burned on, but their light felt exposed now, stripped of pageantry, reduced to illumination without meaning. The Alpha King stood at the center of it all, crown still on his head, yet suddenly weightless. He looked not at the crowd, not at his Luna, but at the child whose presence had fractured the night beyond repair. "What is your name?" he asked quietly. The boy did not hesitate. Chiron. The name struck him like a memory that had waited years for permission to surface. He exhaled sharply. I once thought of that name, the Alpha King admitted before he could stop himself. Long ago. She did not soften. You thought of many things, she said. You chose power instead. The Luna's voice cut through the tension, sharp with panic. This means nothing, she insisted. Even if he is yours, he was born outside the pack. A low growl rippled through the ranks, uncertain, divided. The Alpha King raised a hand, silencing her. Enough. He stepped closer to Chiron, careful now, as though approaching something sacred rather than threatening. You feel it too, he said, not accusing. The blood answers. Chiron studied him calmly. Blood isn't loyalty. The Alpha King closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, something in his expression had changed. I was wrong, he said. The words did not carry absolution. They carried fracture. The Luna stared at him in disbelief. You cannot say that in front of them. I must, he replied. He turned to the pack, voice carrying without dominance. I rejected my mate because I believed strength meant control. I believed barrenness was weakness. I believed a crown made me right. Murmurs rippled, shock, unease, recognition. I was wrong, he repeated. The words landed like a blade set carefully into the foundation of the pack's certainty. Chiron did not react. She watched closely. You humiliated me, she said quietly, and you called it leadership. The Alpha King bowed his head, not deeply, not theatrically. I don't ask forgiveness, he said. I ask acknowledgement of harm. She considered him for a long moment. This changes nothing, she replied. Not for us. He nodded. I know. The Luna's composure shattered completely. Then what was the point, she demanded. Why invite her at all? The Alpha King did not look at her. Because I wanted proof I had won, he admitted. The honesty was devastating. And instead, he continued, I was shown what I lost. Chiron shifted slightly, the movement subtle but anchoring. The air responded. I don't want your loss, the boy said calmly. And I don't want your pity. The Alpha King met his gaze. What do you want? Chiron thought for a moment. For my mother to be left in peace. Silence stretched. The Alpha King inhaled deeply. Then that is what you will have. He turned to the elders. This ceremony is ended. A gasp ran through the pack. There will be no claims tonight, he continued. No declarations, no tests. The elders hesitated. Stand down, he repeated, and this time the authority in his voice was stripped of performance, raw, unquestioned. The pack obeyed. The Alpha King faced her again. You should leave before the pack decides to reclaim control without me, she nodded. That's wise. You kept him from me, he said quietly, but you gave him something I never could. What's that? She asked. He looked at Chiron. Freedom. Chiron did not smile. He accepted the truth. They turned to leave. The pack parted instinctively, not in reverence, not in hostility, in uncertainty. As they walked away from the ceremonial grounds, the Alpha King remained standing beneath the torches, crown gleaming hollowly on his head. He had invited her to be mocked. Instead, he had been forced to confront the truth he had spent years avoiding. That legacy built on cruelty always collapses the moment it faces choice. I hear your frustration, and you're right to call it out. Nothing is wrong with your engine. Nothing has changed in the rules. This is not about running out of ideas or words. What happened was a delivery failure, not a creative one, and I own that. Let's reset properly and do this the way you locked it. They did not rush their departure. That was the first thing the pack noticed. She walked at an even pace, spine straight, head unbowed, her hand resting lightly on Chiron's shoulder. He matched her stride without effort, his presence calm, centered, disturbingly complete. No fear chased them, no triumph followed. That unsettled the pack more than shouting ever could. If she had fled, they could have dismissed her as weak. If she had gloated, they could have branded her cruel. But she did neither. Behind them, the ceremonial grounds remained frozen in uncertainty. No elder called after them. No warrior stepped forward to block their path. The Alpha King stood motionless beneath the torches, crown still on his head, eyes fixed on the child who did not look back. The pack parted instinctively as they passed, wolves shifting aside without conscious command. Some lowered their heads, others watched with naked confusion. A few bristled, resentment coiling beneath their skins, but none moved. The air itself seemed to hold them in place. At the edge of the grounds, where torchlight thinned and shadow reclaimed its rule, she stopped. Not because she was hesitant, because she chose to. She turned slowly, letting the pack see her face fully, not hardened, not victorious, simply resolved. "You called me barren," she said calmly. "You let that word define me." A murmur rippled, uneasy. "You used it to justify cruelty," she continued. "You used it to excuse obedience." Her gaze found the elders first, then the warriors, then finally the Luna, whose composure had collapsed into tight, trembling silence. "You do not get to use my body to prove your righteousness ever again." Silence deepened. She did not wait for apology. She did not ask for acknowledgement. She simply turned away. The forest received them immediately. The moment they crossed into shadow, the air loosened, dominance pressure fading, expectation dissolving. The land did not bow to ceremony. It did not remember crowns. It only knew truth and movement. They walked until the sounds of the pack disappeared entirely. Only then did she slow. Chiron exhaled softly. "They didn't follow." "No," she said. "They don't know how." He glanced back once, expression thoughtful rather than afraid. "He didn't try to stop us." "No," she agreed. That was the hardest part for him. They continued deeper into the forest, following paths she had memorized years ago, routes learned in exile, chosen for escape rather than conquest. The moon followed overhead, pale and impartial. After a time, Chiron spoke again. "You were angry," he said. "Yes, but you didn't shout." She smiled faintly. "Shouting would have made it about them." He nodded, absorbing that. They reached a shallow clearing just before dawn, where a stream cut quietly through stone and moss. She knelt to drink, watching the water ripple back into calm. Chiron crouched beside her. "Do you think he regrets it?" She considered the question carefully. "Yes," she said at last, "but regret isn't repair." "And forgiveness? That's not something you owe someone who learned too late." He accepted that without resistance. As light began to creep into the sky, they built a small fire, practical, low, unannounced. The forest did not resist them. It did not demand explanation. Chiron watched the flames for a long moment. "They wanted me," she nodded. "They wanted what you represent. And you didn't let them have it." She met his gaze steadily. "Because you are not a symbol." He smiled faintly at that. Far behind them, the pack began to fracture. Arguments erupted where silence had been expected. Elders questioned each other openly. Warriors argued about law, about blood, about whether authority existed without obedience. And at the center of it all, the Alpha King removed his crown. He did not announce it. He did not destroy it. He simply set it down on the stone dais and stepped away. No one stopped him. No one followed. By the time the sun rose fully, the pack understood something irreversible had occurred. Not rebellion, not conquest. Exposure. Back in the forest, she and Chiron moved on without urgency. They had not taken anything. They had left something behind instead. And that absence of obedience, of shame, of submission would haunt the pack far longer than any throne ever could. Morning arrived without ceremony. Light filtered through the canopy in pale ribbons, touching bark and stone with quiet insistence. The forest did not care what had happened the night before. It did not pause to honor kings or mourn the collapse of spectacle. It simply continued, steady, indifferent, honest. She welcomed that. They moved at first light, following the stream until it narrowed into a series of shallow crossings. Chiron walked ahead now, alert but relaxed, senses tuned without tension. He did not look back toward the packlands. Whatever tether had once existed had been cut cleanly. "You're quiet," she observed. "I'm listening," he replied. "To what?" "To myself." The answer settled warmly in her chest. They climbed higher as the day unfolded, leaving the dense forest for open ground broken by scattered stone and scrub. From the ridge, the land behind them stretched wide. No banners visible, no smoke from ceremonial fires, just territory learning how to exist without a crown. Chiron stopped and studied it for a long moment. "They're going to argue," he said. "Yes. Some will blame you. Yes. Some will blame him. Yes. And some will blame me." She nodded once. That's the cost of refusing to disappear. He accepted that without complaint. They descended the ridge and reached a wide basin where several small groups had gathered, travelers, traders, lone wolves passing through without allegiance. Conversations paused briefly as she and Chiron entered the open space, eyes lifting, scents tasting the air. No challenge came, no recognition either. That was the difference. A woman near a cook fire nodded politely. A hunter glanced at Chiron, then away, instinct registering something steady but not threatening. Life continued. They rested near a stand of weathered stones, sharing food quietly. Chiron watched the basin, thoughtful. "This place doesn't need a leader," he said. "No," she replied. "It needs agreement." By midday, a messenger arrived, not from the pack they had left, but from another territory farther east. He approached carefully, posture open, hands visible. "I bring no challenge," he said. She inclined her head slightly. "Then speak." "Word is spreading," he continued, "about the ceremony, about the child." Chiron met his gaze calmly. The messenger swallowed. "Some packs will see opportunity, and others threat," she said. "Yes," she studied him. "Why come to us?" "Because some will ask whether you intend to claim power," he said honestly. She laughed softly. "We walked away from it." The messenger nodded. "That answer will disappoint many." "Good," Chiron said evenly. The messenger hesitated, then bowed. Not deeply, not submissively, respectfully. "Safe travels," he said, and left without further questions. Chiron watched him go. "They'll keep coming." "Yes," she agreed. "But they won't all stay." They left the basin by late afternoon, choosing a western route that followed wind rather than road. Clouds gathered low as evening approached, casting the land in muted gray. As dusk fell, the scent reached her, familiar, restrained, conflicted. She stopped. Chiron felt it too. He followed. "Yes," she said quietly, "but not to take." The Alpha King emerged from the trees alone, no guards, no insignia. He had removed the crown. His presence felt smaller without it, still alpha, but unarmored. "I didn't come to stop you," he said. She folded her arms, "Then speak quickly." "I stepped down," he said simply. She did not react. "The elders are furious," he continued. "The pack is splitting." "That was inevitable," she replied. He nodded. "I know." Chiron studied him closely. "Why come here?" The Alpha King met his gaze. "Because I needed to see you without an audience." Chiron said nothing. "I was wrong." The Alpha King said again, quieter now, "About strength, about legacy." She watched him carefully. "You were wrong about obedience." "Yes," he agreed, "and about you." Silence stretched. "I won't ask forgiveness," he said. "I don't deserve it." "Correct," she replied. "I won't ask for him," he continued, nodding toward Chiron. "He deserves choice." Chiron tilted his head. "And what do you deserve?" The question struck harder than accusation. The Alpha King exhaled slowly. "To live with what I did." She inclined her head slightly. "That's the first honest answer you've given." He turned to leave, then paused. "They will try to crown him someday," he said quietly. Chiron's voice was calm. "They'll fail." The Alpha King nodded once, accepting the truth. When he disappeared back into the trees, the land did not tense. It simply closed behind him. They made camp that night beneath an open sky. Stars burned clear and distant, unconcerned with bloodlines. Chiron lay back against his pack, eyes tracing constellations. He looked smaller. "Yes," she said, "because power without consent always is." He smiled faintly. "I don't want to be large like that." She rested a hand on his shoulder. "You won't be." As sleep took them, the wind shifted westward, carrying their scent away from crowns and ceremonies. Behind them, a kingdom learned what it meant to stand without someone to kneel to. And ahead of them stretched a future that asked only one thing, that they keep choosing it. They woke to wind. Not the sharp kind that carried warnings, but a steady current moving across the basin as if the land itself had decided on a direction. She rose quietly, senses expanding, reading what the night had rearranged. No pursuit, no watchers, just distance settling in properly at last. Chiron sat up, stretching. "We're farther out now." "Yes," she said. "Far enough that decisions won't chase us immediately." They packed with ease and continued west, following the wind rather than the paths that promised safety in exchange for obedience. The terrain shifted again, stone breaking through grass, then widening into flats where herds grazed without banners marking ownership. By midday, they encountered resistance for the first time. Not hostility, interest. A small group approached from the south, 5 wolves, mixed ages, no clear leader among them. Their formation was loose, unthreatening, but attentive. They stopped at a respectful distance. "We felt him," one said, nodding toward Chiron. "Back at the ceremony, and again last night." Chiron remained still. "You felt choice," he replied. The speaker blinked. "Yes." Another stepped forward, older, eyes sharp. "Some of us want to leave our pack," she said. We're tired of proving ourselves to people who mistake fear for order. She met the woman's gaze calmly. Then leave. The woman frowned. You don't want followers? No, she said simply. We don't want dependents. Chiron added, if you come because you're afraid to decide alone, you'll bring that fear with you. Silence followed. The older woman nodded slowly. Fair. They parted without ten, some disappointed, some relieved. None followed. Chiron watched them go. They wanted certainty. Yes, she replied. Certainty is addictive. As afternoon wore on, signs of tension reached them from behind. Raised voices carried on the wind, distant howls not meant for communication but for claiming space. The pack they had left was arguing loudly now, identity tearing at itself. Chiron paused. They're fighting. Yes. Will someone get hurt? She considered carefully. Probably. He absorbed that without flinching. That's not on us. No, she agreed. It's on what they refused to face sooner. They camped near a low escarpment that night, fire shielded by stone. Chiron sat quietly, watching shadows dance. I don't feel guilty, he said after a while. I thought I might. She smiled softly. Guilt belongs to those who chose harm when they had options. He nodded, satisfied. Later, as the fire burned low, a messenger arrived. Young, nervous, carrying the scent of the fractured pack. He stopped well beyond reach. I was sent to find you, he said. Not to bring you back, to warn you. She folded her arms. Of what? The elders are trying to claim authority by declaring the child illegitimate, he said quickly. They're spreading word to other packs. Chiron's expression did not change. They think if they name you unworthy, they can erase what happened, the messenger continued. They want to crown someone else fast, she nodded, and they want us to respond. Yes. Chiron looked at the messenger calmly. We won't, the messenger hesitated. That may not stop them. No, she said, but it will reveal them. The messenger swallowed. Some will still come. She inclined her head. Then they'll learn. The messenger bowed awkwardly and left. Chiron exhaled. They're afraid of being judged. Yes, she said, and afraid of not being. He stared into the fire. What if they try to hurt people because of me? She moved closer, grounding, steady. Then we stop that harm when it crosses our path. Not before, not preemptively. He nodded slowly. That makes sense. Far to the east, the pack fractured in earnest. Declarations were made. Names were spoken loudly. Authority was claimed without consent. Some wolves resisted, others complied out of habit. Violence simmered, then spilled, and through it all, one truth persisted. No one could undo what had been witnessed. No decree erased resonance. No title erased choice. Back at their camp, the wind shifted again, colder now. Chiron lay back, hands behind his head, staring at the stars. I don't want them chasing me forever, he said. They won't, she replied. Chasing requires belief. He smiled faintly. I'm glad you didn't teach me how to rule. She returned the smile. I taught you how to walk away. As sleep took them, the land settled around their fire, indifferent to crowns and ceremonies. Behind them, power was being argued over like a prize. Ahead of them, nothing waited but space. And for the first time, that was enough. Winter pressed closer. Not harshly, not yet, but with intent. The nights lengthened, air sharpening as if the land itself were testing resolve. She felt it in her bones, the quiet insistence that change was no longer optional for anyone still clinging to old structures. They had moved far enough west that the pack's arguments no longer carried on the wind. Still, echoes arrived through travelers, distorted, emotional, unfinished. The crown had not been reclaimed. It had been contested. Chiron listened as they shared food with a small traveling group one evening, strangers bound by proximity rather than allegiance. Voices lowered when the subject surfaced. They're splitting, a trader said. Some want to choose a new alpha quickly. Others want councils. No one agrees on who decides. Chiron asked calmly, and the former alpha? The trader shook his head. Still there, still refusing the crown. She watched her son carefully. He's doing the one thing they never expected, she said, removing himself from the center. Chiron nodded. That's harder than ruling. Yes. They continued west the next morning, crossing land that felt older than the packs arguing behind them. Here, stones held memory rather than law. Paths faded quickly if not chosen deliberately. By midday, they encountered resistance again, this time more deliberate. 3 wolves approached from the north, posture firm, eyes calculating. Their dominance pressed outward, testing. Chiron felt it immediately. He did not respond. The pressure met nothing and collapsed. The leader frowned. "You're not what we expected." Chiron tilted his head. "Neither are you." "We came to see if the stories were true," the wolf said, "about the heir who refuses." Chiron's voice was steady. "Refusal isn't absence." The wolves exchanged glances. "You could unite fractured packs," another said, "end the chaos." Chiron met his gaze. By becoming the thing that caused it, silence followed. They left without challenge, unsettled more than threatened. That night, as frost crept along the ground, Chiron sat close to the fire, expression thoughtful. "They want me to fix what they broke," he said. "Yes," she replied, "that's common." "And you won't stop me if I choose?" She met his gaze fully. "No, I'll only ask that you know why." He considered that for a long time. "I don't want to be their solution," he said finally. "I want to be my own." Her chest warmed. "Then you already are." Far behind them, the pack reached its breaking point. A claimant rose, loud, aggressive, promising stability through force. Some rallied, others resisted. The former alpha stood between them once, not to command, but to speak. "You cannot rebuild obedience with fear," he said. They ignored him. Violence followed. Not war, but enough. Enough to stain the ground where ceremony once stood. The story of the rejected mate became a warning now, whispered not with mockery, but with regret. And the story of the heir who walked away grew sharper with every attempt to erase him. As winter's first snow fell, she and Chiron stood on a ridge overlooking open plains, wind sweeping clean over the land. "Do you ever wish they would forget us?" Chiron asked. "Yes," she said honestly, "but forgetting takes time." "And if they don't," she placed a hand over his heart, "then we live well enough that their remembering doesn't matter." He smiled faintly. They turned west again, leaving behind packs still fighting over who deserved to rule. Ahead of them lay nothing claimed, nothing promised, only choice. The land changed again as winter settled fully. Snow did not fall all at once. It arrived in quiet layers, softening edges, erasing tracks, forcing decisions to be made with intention rather than habit. Paths that once guided travelers vanished overnight. Only those who moved with awareness continued forward without circling back into old ground. She felt the shift immediately. This was no longer escape. It was arrival. They had reached a high plain bordered by low stone ridges and scattered pine, a place used occasionally by wanderers but claimed by no pack. Wind moved freely here, carrying scent without distortion, stripping dominance down to truth. Chiron thrived in it. He moved with ease across snow-dusted ground, breath steady, senses open. His presence no longer surprised wolves who encountered him. It settled them, not through command, not through pressure, but through coherence. People trusted what did not hunger. One afternoon, as they repaired a shelter left behind by previous travelers, a small group arrived from the south. Not scouts, not messengers, families. They stopped well outside the shelter's range, waiting. She stepped forward first. "This place isn't owned," she said evenly. "We know," a woman replied. "That's why we came." Chiron watched quietly as the group explained. Packs splintering, claimants rising too fast, elders silencing dissent. None asked for leadership, none bowed. "We just want somewhere we're not afraid of being wrong," the woman finished. She looked at Chiron. He met her gaze calmly. "Then stay, but no one here obeys out of fear." The group nodded. That was all they needed. Over the following days, others arrived. Some stayed, some moved on after resting. No hierarchy formed, no ceremony marked belonging. Work did. People shared what they could. They argued openly. They left when they wished. And through it all, Chiron remained simply present. That was what unsettled visitors most. He did not claim space. Space arranged itself around him. One evening, as snow fell thick and slow, an elder who had once served the Eastern Pack sat across from the fire. His posture was weary, his dominance muted by grief. "They crowned another alpha," the elder said quietly. "It didn't hold." Chiron nodded once. "They blamed you," the elder continued, "said the chaos followed your shadow." Chiron looked at him steadily. "Chaos follows lies." The elder closed his eyes. "Yes, I know that now." She watched the exchange carefully. This was the moment where myths formed or dissolved. The elder opened his eyes again. "They want you back, not as heir, as anchor." Chiron did not answer immediately. When he did, his voice was gentle. "Anchors stop movement." The elder bowed his head. "I thought so." He left before dawn. Winter deepened. The plain transformed into something stark and beautiful, wind carving patterns into snow, stars burning sharper in the night sky. The settlement that formed was loose, temporary by design. No one stayed because they were claimed. They stayed because they chose to. One night, as Chiron sat beside her watching snowfall blur the horizon, he spoke softly. "They keep waiting for me to decide something." She smiled faintly. "People like decisions that relieve them of responsibility. And if I don't, then they'll have to choose for themselves." He leaned back, thoughtful. "That I like that better." Far to the east, the former Alpha stood at the edge of his old territory, watching his pack struggle without the certainty he had once enforced. He did not intervene when another claimant failed. He did not speak when elders argued. When wolves asked him what to do, he answered truthfully. "I don't know." Some called it weakness. Others recognized it as the first honest thing he had ever offered them. Stories reached the plains eventually. Not embellished, not triumphant. Stories of a rejected mate who had not begged for redemption. Stories of an heir who had not claimed what was handed to him. Stories of a pack forced to learn that power could not be mocked into obedience. Chiron listened to them once, then stopped asking. "I don't want to be a lesson," he said. "You won't be," she replied. "You're a person." That mattered more. As winter neared its deepest point, a traveler arrived one evening carrying news that felt finished. "The pack has stabilized," he said. "Not unified, but quieter, smaller, more careful." Chiron nodded. "And the Alpha who stepped down?" she asked. The traveler hesitated. "He left." She felt something loosen in her chest. Not joy, not sorrow, closure. "He said leadership without consent wasn't leadership," the traveler added, "and that he'd learned too late." Chiron stared into the fire. "Too late for him." "Yes," she said, "not for us." Snow fell heavier that night, covering old tracks completely. When dawn came, the plain was untouched. Chiron stood beside her, breath steady, eyes clear. "This feels like the end of something," he said. She smiled softly. "It's the end of what tried to own us." They stood together as light broke over land that no longer remembered crowns. And for the first time since the invitation sealed in cruelty arrived, the future felt unburdened by response. Spring did not arrive all at once. It announced itself cautiously, as if testing whether the world was ready to receive it. Snow receded in narrow veins along stone. Grass pushed through in stubborn threads of green. The wind softened, carrying less argument and more possibility. The plain breathed again. She felt it the morning she woke before dawn and realized the air no longer tasted like survival. It tasted like continuity. Chiron stood at the edge of the settlement, watching the horizon brighten. He had grown in ways that could not be measured by height or strength. His presence no longer shifted people unconsciously, it steadied them. That was the difference. The settlement had changed too, not into a pack, not into a kingdom. It remained loose by design. Some people stayed for weeks, some left after days. No one announced arrivals, no one demanded farewells. Choice remained intact. One morning, a delegation arrived from the east, not messengers, not claimants, observers. They stood at the boundary of the plain, waiting. She approached them calmly. "You can speak." A woman stepped forward, older, eyes sharp with long memory. "We came to see if the stories were exaggerated." Chiron joined her side, and, she asked. The woman studied him carefully. They were incomplete. Chiron tilted his head. "What were you expecting?" "A ruler," the woman admitted, "or a weapon." "And what do you see?" The woman exhaled slowly. "A refusal." Chiron nodded. "Good." The delegation did not stay long. They left without asking permission, carrying something heavier than information. Certainty dismantled. As the days passed, the final threads connecting them to the old pack loosened entirely. No more messengers came, no more rumors arrived with urgency. The world had adjusted. One evening, as fireflies flickered faintly in the warming air, Chiron sat beside her and asked a question he had never asked before. "Do you think he ever loved you?" She did not answer immediately. She thought of the Alpha King's certainty, his fear of weakness, his belief that love must serve legacy to be valid. "Yes," she said finally, in the way he was capable of then. "And now," she smiled faintly, "now it doesn't matter." Chiron considered that. "I'm glad you didn't wait for him to change." "So am I." Far away, the former Alpha walked alone across land that no longer recognized his authority. He did not seek another pack. He did not claim another crown. He worked, he listened. When wolves asked him who he was now, he answered honestly, a man learning the cost of being wrong. That answer followed him farther than dominance ever had. Back on the plain, life continued, quiet, imperfect, real. Children played without hierarchy, shaping their steps. Disagreements ended without violence. Strength appeared where it was needed and receded when it was not. And Chiron grew into himself without anyone telling him who he was supposed to become. One afternoon, standing beneath a sky washed clean by rain, he turned to her. "They won't forget," he said. "No," she replied, "but they won't own the memory either. And if one day I choose to lead," she met his gaze fully, "then you'll do it because it serves people, not because it proves something." He smiled. "I think I understand now." The season turned fully. Fields greened, rivers swelled, tracks returned, but none pointed backward. On the anniversary of the ceremony that had tried to break her, she did not mark the day. No ritual honored it. No bitterness surfaced. It passed unnoticed. That was how she knew it no longer held power. At sunset, she and Chiron stood on the ridge overlooking the plain, wind moving freely around them. He was taller now, broader in the shoulders, but still unmistakably himself, unclaimed, unburdened. She placed a hand over his heart one last time, not to guide, not to protect, to acknowledge. "You were never born to replace a throne," she said softly. "I know," he replied. "I was born to end the need for one." They stood there as the light faded, the world opened before them. Behind them lay a kingdom that had tried to mock a woman into obedience and crown itself righteous in the process. Ahead of them stretched a future built on choice rather than conquest. And somewhere far away, an alpha king finally understood what he had lost. Because in the end, the cruelest truth was this. He invited her back to humiliate her, but by arriving with the alpha heir he could never command, she taught an entire realm that real power doesn't kneel, doesn't beg, and doesn't stay where it is mocked.